Hey everyone, we are working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
Are we surprised at all with what we saw today? I'm not. There was no defense from this team in the preseason, and there was no defense from this team tonight. There is no defense against the Liberty, no defense against the Wings, no defense against the Nigerian national team. So why would I come to this game thinking that suddenly the defensive guru, Stephanie White, was going to have them playing defense? Why would I even expect that? I didn't expect it one bit. Offensive game plan. Can anybody tell me what the offensive game plan is for this team?
Yo, did y'all just see that? That right there, Caitlin Clark, the face of the WNBA, the woman who single-handedly moved the needle for this entire league? Walking back to that bench on opening night with a heating pad wrapped around her lower back like she just aged 15 years in one quarter. That is your Indiana Fever in the year 2026. I'm Dre Fiver. This is Street Hoops, and today we are calling everything exactly what it is. No sugarcoating, no soft takes, no let's give them time to develop. No, it's only game one. We saw what we saw, and what we saw was a catastrophe in slow motion dressed up in fever gold. Dallas Wings walk out of Gainbridge Fieldhouse with a 107-104 victory on opening day, and the fans who packed that arena on what should have been one of the most electric nights in franchise history got exactly what the preseason warned them about: a team with no defensive identity, no offensive coherence, and a head coach who looks more lost than the player she's supposed to be guiding. Welcome back to the hospital fever, everybody. We missed you. We did not miss this. Let me paint the picture for you before we get into the details, because context matters. This was not supposed to be just another regular season game. This was supposed to be a statement. This was supposed to be Caitlin Clark's triumphant return after a 2025 season that was ripped away from her after just 13 games due to injury. This was supposed to be the crowning moment of an offseason where Indiana told the world they were ready to compete, and the opponent, the Dallas Wings, rolled into Gainbridge with Paige Bueckers, the reigning #1 overall pick, alongside newly drafted Azzi Fudd, the 2026 #1 overall selection. According to league records and multiple sports journalists covering the game, this was actually the first time in WNBA history that 4 consecutive #1 overall picks, Boston, Clark, Bueckers, and Fudd, shared the same floor simultaneously. The marketing writes itself. The occasion was massive, the stakes were real, and Indiana still found a way to lose the moment. The final score was Dallas 107, Indiana 104. And sports journalists covering the game noted that this was the first season opener in WNBA history where both teams eclipsed 100 points. If that sounds like a barn burner, pump the brakes, because Dre is here to tell you that high-scoring basketball and good basketball are not the same thing. What we witnessed today was two teams deciding defense was optional, with neither squad putting any real pressure on the ball or making the opponent work for anything. It was freestyle basketball with a veneer of excitement. And in a no-defense game, the team with the better offensive system wins. Today, that team was Dallas, and it wasn't particularly close when you look beyond the final margin. Now let's talk box scores, because numbers do not lie even when coaches and front offices try to spin them. Caitlin Clark finished the game with 20 points on 7 of 1-8 shooting, 7 assists, 5 rebounds, and 5 turnovers. On the other side of the floor, Paige Bueckers dropped 20 points on 8 of 1-0 shooting, 4 assists, and just 1 turnover. Completely different story. Bueckers was efficient, controlled, and decisive. Clark looked like a player fighting through a system that does not know what to do with her. And let me be emphatic here. That is not Caitlin Clark's failure. That is a coaching failure. That falls squarely on Stephanie White. Kelsey Mitchell led Indiana with 30 points, going 11 for 2, 2 from the field. Aaliyah Boston added 23 points on 9 for 1-4 shooting. On paper, 3 Fever players scoring 20-plus points looks like a winning effort. So why did they lose? Because the offense had one mode, and one mode only: give Kelsey Mitchell the ball in isolation and let her create something. That is not an offensive system. That is street ball. That is what you run when you have no scheme, when your timeout plays don't work, when you have not installed anything meaningful in the months leading into the season. According to multiple analysts and reporters covering the Fever, Caitlin Clark was used in pick-and-roll situations a grand total of around 3 to 4 times in the entire game. 3 to 4 times. For a player whose entire game is built on using screens, reading the defense, pulling up or kicking to shooters, She was essentially a decoration for 40 minutes of professional basketball. And here is what really tells the story. The 2 3-pointers Clark made were both catch and shoot. Somebody else created, she spotted up, and she knocked it down. Because Caitlin Clark is good enough to make buckets even when the offense ignores her. The 7 3-point attempts she missed? Those were all self-created. Clark trying to manufacture offense on her own because the system gave her nothing to work with. When Stephanie White's offense does not generate Clark an open look, Clark has no choice but to hunt. And when she hunts without a screen, without a play call designed to free her, against professional defenders who are already keying on her, the results are going to be ugly. 7 for 18 shooting is the direct product of a coaching staff that does not know how to use the best guard in the sport. Sophie Cunningham shot twice, 2 attempts, in the entire game. I want everyone to let that settle in for a moment. Sophie Cunningham, one of the most reliable off-ball shooters on this roster, a player specifically brought back to stretch the floor and create spacing for Clark in Boston, was given the ball exactly 2 times as a shooter. How is that possible? How do you look at your spacing on the floor and decide that Sophie Cunningham does not need the basketball? The answer is that there is no system in place to get her the ball. There is no choreography, no player movement, no intentional design that gets shooters open looks. It is ISO ball and freelancing, and when your best ISO player is Kelsey Mitchell, everyone else just fills in the gaps and hopes something falls their way. Meanwhile, on the Dallas side of the floor, their ball movement was crisp. According to reporters at the game, the Wings ran multiple pick-and-roll and pick-and-pop actions with Jessica Shepard as the screener, generating open looks and high-percentage shots throughout. That is what an actual offensive system looks like. You identify your personnel, you install actions that leverage their strengths, and you run those actions with precision. Odyssey Sims, the same Odyssey Sims who used to play for Indiana, by the way, finished with 20 points off the bench and effectively put the dagger in the Fever down the stretch. RK Ogunbowale added 22. Jessica Shepard had 13. Every contributor on that Dallas roster had a role, and that role was clearly defined. The Indiana Fever had Kelsey ISO, and Kelsey ISO, with a side of Aaliyah Boston freelancing from the elbow. Now let me talk about something that should alarm every single Fever fan watching this video. At the end of the game, and this was widely noted by journalists and fans watching courtside, Stephanie White was reportedly so uncertain about what play to call in a critical late-game situation that she deferred to an assistant coach to actually address the huddle and communicate the strategy to the players. Let me say that louder for the people in the back. The head coach of a professional basketball team, in a timeout situation that could determine the outcome of her team's season opener, could not confidently run her own huddle. She let an assistant take over because she did not have the answer. And the play that came out of that timeout? Clark was used as a decoy. Again, the exact same thing we watched them do in multiple critical situations last season. The franchise's most dangerous offensive weapon standing on the weak side while everybody else tries to improvise a bucket. Let us talk about Caitlin Clark's injury situation, because this is where things get genuinely concerning beyond just the basketball. According to multiple reporters who were covering the game in person, Clark was seen heading into the locker room tunnel between quarters where the training staff appeared to be treating her groin area. She returned to the bench wearing a heating pad around her lower back. Now, Clark has already been dealing with a leg sleeve situation that she downplayed heading into this game. As she told reporters earlier in the week, and I am paraphrasing here, it is just a little compression on the leg. She did not want to make a big deal of it. But here is the thing. Caitlin Clark said something almost identically dismissive about her condition before the injury that wiped out her 2025 season. She is a competitor. She is not going to come to a press conference and tell you she is hurt, unless she literally cannot walk. So when you see a heating pad, when you see the training staff in the tunnel, when you see a player who looks subdued and sluggish by her own historic standards, Dre is telling you, pay attention. That is a red flag. That is not rust. Something is going on. And here is the part that genuinely infuriates me. The way this team is currently constructed, with no real offensive system, no designed plays to free Clark without her having to create everything herself, the physical demand on her body is higher than it needs to be. When you are forced to create off the dribble on 70% of your possessions because your coach cannot scheme you an open look, you are putting wear and tear on joints that have already been compromised by injury. A properly designed offense protects its star players. It uses movement, off-ball screens, and spatial actions to generate easy looks so that the superstar is not grinding their body into the ground every single possession. Stephanie White is not doing that. She is not protecting Clark. She is not protecting her body, or her confidence, or her production, and the results are visible in real time. According to journalists who were trackside, Clark's shooting start was rough, which is understandable given the circumstances, but what was more alarming was her demeanor. Multiple observers noted that she appeared subdued, less energetic than normal, and at times looked like a player going through the motions rather than competing at full throttle. Now you can chalk that up to a slow start. You can chalk that up to Game 1 jitters after missing most of last season. But combined with the physical issues, combined with the system that is asking her to do everything without any structural support, and you start to wonder whether this situation is slowly wearing her down. Not just physically, mentally, emotionally. Now, let me shift the conversation to the personnel decisions, because the coaching issues go beyond just play design. Aaliyah Boston played around 26 minutes in this game. Monique Billings did not play at all. Lexi Hall was on minutes restriction. And what this communicated to the Dallas Wings is that Indiana is not willing to go to war at full capacity on opening night. Whether those restrictions were medically warranted or coaching decisions is almost beside the point. The optics are terrible and the production suffered because of it. Boston finished with 23 points and 9 of 14 shooting, which is excellent. But her first quarter? 0 points, 1 rebound, 2 assists. She was not a factor for the first 10 minutes of the biggest game of the Fever's early season, and the team fell behind early because of it. Michaela Timpson, however, let me give credit where it is due. She looked genuinely good. 11 points on 5 of 6 shooting, with active defense and real effort on both ends. Timpson brought energy off the bench that the starters could not manufacture. Multiple analysts watching the game noted she deserves a legitimate rotation spot going forward. And honestly, if I am running this team, she is getting those minutes over some of the veterans who are not producing. Raven Johnson also only played 11 minutes, and nothing she did in those 11 minutes suggested she should be getting fewer. She was fine. She was productive. Give her the floor time. The decisions around who is and who is not on the court in crucial moments continue to be puzzling from a coaching standpoint. And then there is Ty Harris. 0 points, 0 meaningful contributions. A player who came into this season already banged up and has done nothing on the court to justify a roster spot at this level. I will not spend another minute on her, because she did not earn that time. Moving on. Let me tell you something about Caitlin Clark that should be celebrated even in the middle of all this frustration. According to multiple journalists covering the game, Clark became the fastest player in WNBA history to reach 1,000 career points, 250 rebounds, and 250 assists, a milestone she hit during this very game. On opening night, in a loss, which is honestly the most Indiana Fever thing that could possibly happen. Your star player makes history, you lose anyway, and the headline the next morning is whether she is injured again. But let us acknowledge it properly. That is a staggering milestone. The pace at which Clark has accumulated those numbers, especially factoring in that she missed the majority of last season, is a testament to how transformative her presence is when she is healthy and operating at full capacity. But here is the uncomfortable truth that milestone forces us to confront. What would those numbers look like if she were in a real offensive system? What would her efficiency look like if she were being set screens? If the offense was designed to get her open rather than forcing her to manufacture everything herself? When Caitlin Clark is firing on all cylinders, properly utilized, she is arguably the most dangerous offensive player in this league. We have seen flashes of it. The issue is that Stephanie White has never, not once, across multiple seasons as this team's head coach, demonstrated the ability to consistently put Clark in positions to succeed through scheme. It has always been on Clark's individual brilliance. And individual brilliance has a ceiling, and it has a physical cost, and that cost is being paid right now in real time. The Dallas Wings, for context, won this game with a roster that went 10 and however many last season. They were not considered a serious playoff contender coming in. Paige Bueckers is exceptional. 20 points on 8 of 1-0 shooting is elite. But Indiana had arguably more raw talent on their roster than Dallas does. The talent gap should favor Indiana. The coaching gap clearly does not. And that is the most damning thing you can say about Stephanie White entering her 4th year in this role. The talent has never been the issue. The development, the system, and the in-game management have been the ceiling. Here is where I land on all of this heading out of opening day. Indiana Fever fans, you are right to be concerned. You are not overreacting. The preseason showed no defense and no offensive system, and the regular season has now confirmed it. One game into a new year, the exact same problems that existed 1 year ago and 2 years ago are still present. No pick-and-roll architecture designed around Caitlin Clark, no defensive scheme that generates stops consistently, no depth rotation that makes sense, no in-game adjustments that shift momentum. And now, Again, legitimate injury questions surrounding the franchise player who can barely stay on the floor long enough to show the world what she is actually capable of. The Indiana Fever are a team with legitimate star power. Clark, Boston, and Mitchell is one of the better trios in the Eastern Conference. On paper, they have a shooter in Cunningham who is criminally underutilized. They have young depth pieces in Timpson and Johnson who deserve more floor time. The ingredients for a real playoff team are theoretically there. The one thing standing between this roster and what it should be is the coaching. And until that gets addressed, either through a drastic change in philosophy from Stephanie White or through something more definitive, what you watch today is what you are going to keep watching. ISO ball, injury scares, lost opportunities, and a superstar who deserves so much better than this. Dre Fiver is done sugarcoating it. This is your Indiana Fever. This is your head coach. And right now, the math does not add up. All right, Street Hoops family, that is going to do it for today's breakdown. If you made it to the end of this video, you already know what time it is. Smash that like button right now because this kind of no-filter analysis does not happen anywhere else on this platform. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Stephanie White is the right coach for this team? Do you think Caitlin Clark's injury situation is more serious than the Fever are letting on? I want to read every single one of those takes. Subscribe to Street Hoops if you are not already on the roster because we are just getting started on this 2026 WNBA season, and there is going to be drama every single week. I'm Dre Fiver. Stay locked in. And as always, we call it like we see it.